Welcome back into the room, Mr. Cunningham.
Well, thank you, Vice Chair. What do you guys think about UNC?
Well, we were waiting until you got back in the room. We decided it was better for you to be part of the conversation. So, given your expertise on the Tar Heels, we were hoping for your input.
Yeah, I got the resume here. Everything looks good, solid. ACC top half. Yeah, let's go to Dayton. They're good enough. Let's put them in.
You got it.
And with that, Indiana's bubble has burst because of Bubba. And we welcome you back to the House of Hoosier podcast, brought to you by the Field of 68 Podcast Network. He is not Bubba. I'm not Bubba Cunningham. I am Austin Platt. He is Ian Plaskoff, and we are here to air our thoughts out after Indiana's season abruptly comes to an end after the Big Ten tournament disappointment against Oregon, and then obviously the news on Selection Sunday that Indiana was the second team left out, and a snub. I think is as simple as that. As Indiana with four quad one wins, 10 and 10 record in the Big Ten, a conference that was rumored to get double digit teams in, only gets in eight as both the Hoosiers and the Buckeyes are left out. And with no postseason tournament, Indiana declines anything else. The season is officially over. With that, the Mike Woodson era is over. And we're here to kind of talk about everything really from just this season. We'll do a review, give some player grades, give some reward awards to some guys. We'll save all the Mike Woodson era stuff for later. That kind of deserves to be thrown on the back burner for now because there's a lot more, I think, prevalent thoughts in our minds. Ian, I was pretty confident, on Sunday that Indiana's name would be called. There were no bid stealers on Sunday. Everything kind of went the way we expected. And well, sometimes when your athletic director is not in that room, it's a pretty big difference.
I was shocked. I was pretty fairly certain that Indiana was going to be in Dayton. And now here's the gripe that I have. It's fine that Indiana didn't make it. But to have North Carolina instead of Indiana, or to have North Carolina, not even instead, but to have North Carolina in and Indiana not, it just sets some kind of double standard that does not make much sense. It feels like we were here earlier this year in a different sport. It feels like we've talked about football every episode, but we're going to go right back to it. Brand bias, SEC bias, things of the sort. I mean, that's not, I mean, there was no explicit statement of that, but when you put what 14 SEC teams in the tournament and one of them is a 19 and 15 Texas team, uh, then so there were some others that were seated higher than they might have been otherwise, and then you add North Carolina into the mix in Dayton. I don't know. I mean, Indiana is a school that you could claim brand bias on too, so that's a little bit of a the other side of that. And I was shocked. I was like 95% confident that Indiana would make it, and I think that's the general thought of most people. But as soon as I saw North Carolina get announced in the second region, I think it was, yeah, I knew it was over. There was no shot.
Yeah, once the first four teams were announced, it was like, wait a second, hold on. And then you figured that there's no way Indiana was going to completely jump up a seed line and go to 10. So it was like, all right, the last 11. But now we knew that would be filled by another, I believe, automatic qualifier it was. So just like disappointing. You're right. It's like Indiana really like you have yourselves to blame for this. Like if you win one of Michigan, Maryland, UCLA, Purdue, like any one of those games, even you beat Oregon, the heck with it. You're probably not having to sweat it out. And but obviously, like it's the inconsistency. You're right. I mean, last year Indiana State had the highest net ever. They were like in the mid 30s, I want to say, and didn't make it because they didn't have enough quad one wins and they had a quad four loss. Well, UNC was one quad one win. They have a good net and they have a quad three loss, I think. And Indiana obviously had no losses outside the quad one, and the Tar Heels are in. So. Not a surprise that UNC maybe got in. I think Xavier's maybe the bigger one. The Big East is not a phenomenal conference, but by any means. I mean, I know UConn and Creighton kind of paced that, and Marquette's in there as well. But
Forget about St. John's.
yeah, that's right, right, totally. Gosh, forgot about I was like, I know I'm missing a team. The tournament champs, the Johnnies, Rick Pitino, a great first year. What a fun pod that will be with Pitino. Obviously, Kansas in there with Self and then Calipari with Arkansas. There's another team. Arkansas, what, 6 wins in the SEC conference, in conference play, something like that, or something, and they're like a 10 seed. Regardless, the inconsistency is what's frustrating. And Indiana had twice as many quad one wins as both Xavier and Texas combined, or Xavier and UNC combined. And Texas is that team with a bunch of quad one wins, not a great net, and they're sitting in the tournament, even though they have like what did you say, like 15 losses or something. So frustrating, but kind of like a fair wade for this season, which was a big disappointment to end. And considering how quickly the Big Ten tournament run ended, it was like, well, we knew we'd be either in Dayton or completely out of it, and it's unfortunately the latter and not the former. Ian, that game against Oregon feels like a while ago now, but let's kind of run through that. Indiana really just falls flat in its face, I think is the easiest way to put it. Really kind of up a little, got off to a good start, but completely outmatched in the end by the Ducks, 72 to 59. The final. Indiana fails to put up 60 points in this game with a home crowd. Just kind of your early thoughts on that. I was there, and it was just like the end of the first half. That run that the Ducks had is, Indiana fans were pin drop silent, and that was just like they could never get it back in the second.
Yeah, this game kind of felt like all the problems throughout the season coming together into one. Just inconsistency, lack of ability to make shots. Indiana shot 36% from the field. Um, I mean, that was really what it was. The Oregon is also a great team. We'll have to put that out there. It is also interesting looking at this that Oregon was the 8 seed in the Big Ten tournament. They're a 5 seed in the Big Dance. Indiana was the 9 seed in the Big Ten tournament, and one loss just completely knocked them out. So that is also a weird thing to look at. Also, while I'm on this topic, this is a little bit of a tangent. How is Michigan a 5 seed? The Wolverines won the Big Ten tournament. They're seated lower than Purdue and Wisconsin, who they beat multiple times, I think. Um, Now, I'm not a Michigan fan by any means, but that's another one of those inconsistency issues that I have a problem with. It felt like the Big Ten in general got a little bit of disrespect. But back to this game, in the words of our good friend Ben Haller, no, it was just a bunch of problems of inconsistency and lack of shot making. Oregon made shots; they had better offensive just rhythm, and it's these scoring droughts that continue to kill Indiana every year. That these 5+ minute scoring droughts that happen multiple times every season, really feels like every game. And it struck again.
Indiana picked a really bad day to go cold from the field. Luke Goody had 0 field goals made, 1 free throw. Miles Rice, 0 field goals made. Mackenzie Mbako, 2 threes. Trey Galloway, 2 threes. And those were the only 4 threes that Indiana made, as Galloway had 15 points. Renew was great off the bench in the second half, but the first half, Indiana just like offensively had nothing. Like they were trying that deep post touch for Ballo. He was getting doubled, and they were kind of unable to work the ball around. No one was moving on offense. It was just stale. Just the classic Mike Woodson offense where there's just not enough movement and no one's cutting to the basket. There were a few nice cuts. There were a few good drives by both Galloway and Rice, who I thought in the first half played well off the bench, even though he didn't score. But he had 5 assists in this game, even though he missed all 5 of his shots, and a few dump offs to Ballo for easy baskets. Another physical game, but Indiana, I think the final was 13 for 28 on layups. So I mean, just missed so many easy shots in this game, and only have themselves to blame, and completely outmatched at the end of the first half, and tried its best to get back into it into the second half. They were down by 8 at the break, and they had like a quick like 6-2 run to start, and the crowd was there. And I want to say, like, the crowd tried to really get behind them a few times. Kind of that first time they really rose to their feet was like, all right, this is the loudest this place has been. But it just still wasn't enough. And eventually, Shellstad made enough shots, and the rest of the bunch. Bamba had 17 points, and Biddle played well in the first half. He had sorry played well in both halves, I think, but was physical down low. Angel had 10 first half points, which was big, and I mean in the end a tough Oregon team, which Dana Altman always wins in March, but God, just a terrible time for the entire team seemingly to go cold on kind of on both ends of the floor. But I mean, 59 points is just not winning you basketball games this day and age, and it's another kind of neutral site disappointment as we've seen far too much in the Mike Woodson era.
It's very hard to remember, except the past couple Big Ten tournaments where maybe it was one or two games. It's very hard to remember the last time that Indiana won a big game on a neutral site court. It's been a problem for the past four. It was a problem with Archie Miller too. I don't really like. It's so odd because Indiana travels so well fan base wise. Like every neutral site game is a home game basically, but it just feels like Indiana never delivers in these neutral site games and in games that matter as well. Like I think back to like Auburn last year or I don't even know what else. I mean, the tournament games,
UConn.
obviously. UConn in that Empire Classic, that was bad. The Bahamas, of course, in this year's non-conference. And then you go to the Big Ten tournament, and it's the same thing again. And last year, I think what Indiana won one game, right? It was that Leal putback against Penn State.
Yep.
Year before that, it was two, and that was the run. Was it the run? No, that was 3 years ago. The run
2 years
with
ago, they beat Maryland and lost to Penn State, a double-digit seed in the semis, which was like
yeah.
a huge disappointment.
And then the year before
Obviously.
that,
Yeah.
it was the run where they beat Illinois. I don't remember who they beat in the first round, and then Jordan Bohannon happened, I believe, and
Yeah, yeah.
that was
Michigan,
that.
Iowa, Michigan and Iowa, yeah. So,
But it's been, I mean, Woodson has done better than most Indiana coaches in recent years in the Big Ten tournament, which is not saying a lot, but um, it just feels like it never goes well, no matter if it's in Indianapolis or in Chicago or in Minneapolis or wherever else they want to put it now. Vegas, I think they want to go.
yeah.
Um, it never seems to work out.
It never has worked out, and I think after that game where Indiana was kind of safely in the field going in, some people had them outside of Dayton. I think a win definitely solidified a spot in the field, but that was that. And little did we think that would be the last time we'd be seeing Mike Woodson walk off the floor and the seniors go for the final time, really, this entire roster, because who knows who is coming back with the new head coach, as now that is the number one thing that Indiana fans have to, think about and, keep their eyes out for is, the announcement of the new coach. And obviously, um, kind of we don't know what to expect. Sources have been all over the place. We'll get to that later. That's kind of a not a pressing issue seemingly right now because I doubt Indiana has a coach lined up this week. But this season as a whole, Ian, let's just kind of let's go back, I guess. And the Hoosiers finished 2024, 25, 19 and 13, 10 and 10 in the conference, 14 and 4 at home, 4 and 6 on the road, which isn't horrible, 1 and 3 at neutral site games. Those 3 games in God in the Bahamas were just disastrous. And then the other neutral site game, I think was it Penn State? Was that the other? Oh, duh, obviously the Big Ten tournament game. So just a huge disappointment. I mean, this season, if we were given a letter grade, the expectations were too high, I think, to begin the year. Talent wise, there was no Trace Jackson Davis on this team. There was no rookie freshman sensation in Jalen Hood-Schifino. They just never had that. But the shooters were like the talent, at least in the backcourt, was there. With you bring in Goody as a solid 3-point shooter, and Baco was supposed to have a big bounce back here. Rice and Carlisle, I think were kind of two like question marks. Like I know both of them, I think had better second halves of their last years at their respective Pac-12 schools. But it was just like, all right, Rice is a solid ball handler. Like, he's young, but he'll make the right decisions. Doesn't have to do everything. Will be, better than Xavier Johnson. And Carlisle can kind of serve as that shooting guard. A great defensive guy. We knew that going in, and kind of can find his shot. And we didn't think Galloway would be starting, or Anthony Leo. God, we'd be playing 20 minutes a game, or really this team would go to the two bigs, and just from what we had in the preseason was all off, and um, a lot to digest. But I mean, this season is like, you got great. Sure, you beat Michigan State on the road. You're in what the second to last team to beat Michigan State after they lost to in the tournament to Wisconsin. But you're the last team to beat Michigan on their home floor, and you can have that go all the way going into the next year. And then obviously beating Purdue was big at home, that dominant second half. But this season, like man, for me, like this gets a not this is not F, I don't think, but I mean it's close to that. Like this is like a D of a grade season, I think.
Yeah, and I think that it's going to be different for this season, and that goes for multiple schools because now we're starting to figure out how NIL impacts team building.
Right.
And originally, when we and the national media saw this roster, and you're like, oh, they spent $11 million. They get all these all Pac-12 honorees, either all Pac-12 freshman team, all Pac whatever. Bring in Ballo, you bring in Rice, you bring in Goody, Carlisle, transfers, transfers, transfers. You bring back some good returners. And Baco, of course, the co-Big Ten freshman of the year. You think, oh, they're just going to gel together perfectly. And on paper, because they have so many good players, they're going to be the 17th best team in the country to start the year. And we have found that NIL is not the ultimate decision maker and money and the players that you bring in. It's how those players play together. And obviously, we found this year that this roster was not necessarily built with the best intentions of playing the best basketball together. They just got a lot of good players and put them all in the same uniform. And it's going to be different to evaluate teams as years go on with NIL and the changing landscape of college athletics, but adjusting my opinions and rating systems for this year with that in mind, I would probably give this team a C minus compared to my expectations. Um, Obviously, A expectations for me would be, making it past the second weekend in the tournament. Um, if they could make an Elite Eight, awesome, that would be great. Um, a B expectation would be probably losing in the first 2 weeks of the tournament. A C expectation would probably be Dayton. Um, and they just missed Dayton, so I'm gonna give them a C minus. A D would be a little bit much for me because I like Indiana was still in contention. And we obviously didn't know how all these guys were gonna play together. It's different than what it was before. So I'm sticking with a C minus, bordering on the D plus, but a very high, like a D double plus. But I'll stick with the C, a low C minus for my grade.
I want to go back to whenever the heck non-conference play ended, I guess to January 1st, when the calendar flipped to 2025. We said the non-conference schedule was a disaster. Like we told ourselves like Indiana did nothing to prove itself at the end of non-conference play. Like the early games, albeit they were double-digit wins, but before the trip to the Bahamas, but it wasn't great. They weren't putting it all together. It was like this team needs plenty of time to gel. And then it's like, all right, in the Bahamas, like, win two games. However the heck you do it, whether it's two and losing the championship or you win that third place game, you need to win two at least. And in all likelihood, you need to win the first game against Louisville because we had no idea what Louisville was going to look like. Figured out they're probably not an NCAA tournament team. That's another team that was criminally underrated. We should have or
Yes.
underseeded when
Yes.
they were what the third team announced or the fourth
They
with the
should have
first
been a
four
six or
games,
a seven.
and they were an 8 seed. It's like all right, that we should have known that we were in trouble then if they were underrating teams that especially that IU killed
It wasn't
or
just
IU got
underrating
killed.
teams, it was underrating non-SEC teams. Like Vanderbilt was on the bubble and they ended up getting a 10. Arkansas did as well. Um, and then you saw some of the ACC and Big 12 teams and Big East teams kind of get a little bit underseeded, but that's just me.
Yeah, that was this was I think Indiana State last year was bad. I think leaving Rutgers out a few years ago was a bad look, but I think this is really bad considering literally the chair of the committee is the UNC athletic director who gets like an extra $1 million or I don't know if I don't know how much it was, but like 100,000 or a million, something like that. He gets at least six digits in his pocket. So I mean, there was a clear like, all right, let's some clear ego involved in here, and obviously you can now no longer fully trust the process that it is a fair and just one regardless. But Indiana, the non-conference scene was just not good, terrible, like really not good enough. And we told ourselves like Indiana, in all likelihood, has to, you can only lose one or two games at home in conference play, and you have to probably go 12-8 to feel good about making the tournament and to kind of override exactly what you did or didn't do, I should say, in the non-conference play. And we sat after the Ohio State game, like, all right, Indiana did its job, and it's like they were 10-10 in conference play for the second straight year with a furious end of season winning streak to get there. And it's just like, ugh, like I should have been more surprised yesterday based on what we said in January. That's kind of what I want to say.
It's a weird thing to think about because you look at a team like North Carolina, their non-conference was, I mean, it's weird. They schedule some difficult teams. They lost to all of them, except for one. Like UNC's only win against a team in the field this year is a 2-point win over UCLA in late December. But that tells you now if you want to get into Dayton, which Indiana does not want to do, I'll put that out there. Indiana wants to be better than Dayton. Um, you schedule a super hard non-conference schedule. If you lose, that's okay. It boosts your RPI, whatever. And then you schedule some easy non-conference games and you play in an easy conference. Like the ACC had a terrible year. It was really bad. And UNC beat teams they were supposed to beat, which Indiana did in the non-conference schedule, did not necessarily do in the Big Ten. But the Big Ten was a better conference this year. But if Indiana scheduled a better non-conference, and even if they still lost those games, that might have boosted the RPI, the strength of schedule a little bit. It feels like we're back in college football playoff talk, which I really don't like. But um, yeah, it's weird. Like you have to sometimes think about pivoting a different direction in the non-conference, and Indiana's off to a good start, I think, in the next coming years, of course, with Marquette coming next year and probably some more tournaments along the way. But when your best home non-conference game is South Carolina, who won two SEC games this year, and then your best non-conference win was what, Providence, who was terrible in the Big East, it's not going to help you out too much.
SIUE, they did beat them, and they are going to the
Yeah, that's a
tournament.
tournament team. That's a tournament team.
That's what 3 wins that Indiana has over the tournament field this year. So hey, congrats to them and good luck. But yeah, I mean, and you get Kentucky next year too. That completely gets
That's
washed under. Yeah, that completely gets lost in the shuffle with now Calipari and Woodson leaving. Who would have thought that both of them, after agreeing to that that neither of them would be coaching? Regardless, the blueprint was put out there years ago or a few years ago, where it's like the committee wants the net rating matters. They added some more numbers and the Torvik and whatever KOR, KPI. I mean, who cares? There's too many numbers there, but the net rating is what matters. And looking at the net ratings of most of those teams that missed out, they're in the 50s, and that's the difference. By the way, we have our candles here. Let's light a candle and let's hold up our candle to West Virginia season, man. The Mountaineer Madness podcast, if it ever reaches the field of 68, man, I feel sorry for you guys because they got screwed more than anybody else. Uh, that's the first snub. Indiana was snubbed, but West Virginia, the first team out, should have been in 100%.
Yeah, well, they were projected in 100% of brackets by bracketologists, and then yeah,
Yeah, well, 0% of the idiots on that committee put them in. So, regardless, but
let's make a
you have to play tough non-conference. That's the bottom line.
let's make a proposition to get Scott Dolson and the West Virginia AD on the committee next year.
As chair and vice chair, and we
Yeah.
won't have this problem next year. I like that. All right, let's kind of go away from that. The non-conference will be better next year, no doubt about it, with the new coach, no matter who it is. But let's do it. Let's do some kind of let's give out MVP, most improved. Let's kind of go down that line. We can go over, give letter grades for some of the players here. Um, all right, let's start MVP of the team. This one's tough. Like it's not like the biggest thing with this team. Like there was no like nucleus, and there wasn't last year either. To be fair, especially without well, Xavier Johnson was never healthy, but not like he was that guy. But I mean, you just like Ware was never a vocal leader by any means. He hated to talk, so you never had that this year. And let's be honest, you really never had that this year. Like your vocal leaders were Galloway's not a vocal leader, even though he was a captain. And Rice was the other captain, and he's not a vocal leader. It was like Leal and Goody, the guys who are, in media trying to cover for Mike Woodson, calling out the fans, which we all thought was ridiculous, and whatnot. But it was like you just didn't have a true leader on this team that would perform on the court and be huge off the court. And you never had that. So for me, team MVP, this is tough because I mean, like,
I don't really know if there is one
I
because
don't
it was
think there
so
is.
balanced.
I like there was like, you know, Bala was obviously cared a ton, and what happened after the Purdue game at Mackey with him calling out Miles Rice and getting mad at him, like he cared obviously, but like he was never like I don't think the most valuable player necessarily on this team because he had his own deficiencies.
I think I've got my answer as far as an answer can go here. I don't know if valuable would be the word in this situation, but especially, well, really only in the second half of the season when Indiana made the run that was necessary. Felt like Trey Galloway was in every play. He was the player of the game, carried Indiana all the way through. And that is also in a credit to turning around his season because the first half of his season, of course, he was still getting over that injury, but he was not spectacular by any means. And into the second half of the season, we saw Galloway take over games. He was more vocal. He was a better leader. He was making shots more, distributing the ball, limited turnovers more than first half of the season. So if there is a pick to make, I think it's going to be Trey Galloway for me.
That's fair. Yeah, I can get behind that. Average nearly 9 points a game, two rebounds, had 149 assists, which off the bench really for a lot of that was incredible. Averaged nearly 5 assists a game, I believe, if I have that right. 149 divided by 32. Yeah, nearly 5 assists, and off the bench and early going, he was averaging like 6 or 7. So yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah, most valuable player is Trey Galloway, all things considered.
I'll switch my word from valuable to timely.
That's fair.
Galloway was the most timely player for Indiana basketball this year in stepping up at the right times. That will be my vote there.
That shot that he hit against Ohio State, like is the I wasn't there, but I think that was one of the loudest that place has been all year round, and especially for a guy who got booed at the beginning of the year on his home floor as a captain and someone who very easily could have been in another school or not, take said, all right, I'm done with basketball and moved on. He had a heck of a year, and there was something else I was gonna say, but it's slipping my mind right now. He deserves it. He deserves a lot of credit, and for he was the treatment was pretty harsh, and he was coming off an injury. He's someone who on other teams is probably not in the starting lineup or not even the first guy off the bench. That's what I was trying to say. So that good on him. Most valuable player, maybe offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year. My offensive player of the year, all things considered, it probably is Malik Reneau for me. I just think that he was injured and not healthy for a lot of the first 5 games after he came back from injury, and I think he missed 6. So he played in 26 games. The team played in 32, I believe. So, or 30, yeah, 32. So, I mean, he missed 6 games and he wasn't healthy for the first 6 after that, we could say. So, but I mean, all things considered, averaged 13 points. I think Ed took that next step he needed to offensively, over 50% from the field. Didn't take a ton of threes, which I think is fine. He's not a three-point shooter. He made just 3 of them, and I think missed like his last 8. But and grabbed 5.5 offensive rebounds. At times, was playing with Umar Ball, never had it right. And there were games where Indiana needed him to be big in the second half and turning to his left hand and finding the angle and being physical. And he needed to take a big step this year. And offensively, I think he definitely did. And I mean, hey, I think Thursday was a great example against Oregon. Came off the bench in the second half and they got 10 points to keep Indiana afloat in a game they had nothing going from the perimeter. So, offensive player of the year, man, I'll give it to Renew. I think it's another year where the big stepped up.
Yeah, I'm. It was the picking an offensive player of the year with this team is so difficult because sometimes there was minimal offense and sometimes the offense was so spread out. But I do think a healthy Malik Renew is a good answer, um, especially when you're looking at the second half of the season. I don't really have any arguments against that. I mean, other people to consider. I mean, from a shooting perspective, Luke Goody wasn't always the greatest from a whole game standpoint of like everything that he could do, but he shot the ball well. Ballo, of course, was reliable down low, but I think Renew is a good answer. And then Defensive Player of the Year, I think there's really only one answer here, and that would be number three.
Yeah, Indiana was snubbed from the NCAA tournament, and more rightfully so. Anthony Leal was snubbed from the defensive Big Ten list. Ridiculous how he wasn't there, and Leal had to play last year when no one expected it. When Xavier Johnson went down and Gabe Cupps wasn't necessarily doing it all, and boy, that was a funny team. That was a weird team last year. But Leal made huge plays last year, and he deserved the right to play this year. And finally, once I think it was kind of when Renew went down, it's like, oh, you got to bring an extra guard into the lineup because you're not playing Langdon Hatton and Umar Ball at the same time, as funny as that sounds. And Leo was kind of that guy and defensively stepped up huge. Had the block against Ohio State, had some, I think some big baskets in there as well. Definitely up the scoring from before, but I mean, one on one, he's one of the best defenders in the conference and in the country, and he wasn't rewarded for it. But again, you play yourself into the lineup because of your defense and Mike Woodson style. And Leo got that, and he is by far Indiana's best defensive player. And someone who, again, Indiana fans are, not going to have a bad word about when they talk about him in the years to come, as now he's maybe already scouting out houses as a real estate agent.
I've got a couple other ones for you that are a bit more unconventional. One is your favorite performance of the year by anyone.
My,
I'll give you mine first. Mine is the Anthony Leal plus 26 without scoring.
oh, yes. Yeah, okay. That was, who was that against?
Um, Washington, maybe? I can't remember
Yeah,
I
that
think
could
it
be
was
right. Or
Washington.
Ohio State, one of those two. Yeah, there's so many like fun memories of him. I think back to last year and the game against Iowa is what sticks out to me. Hit a couple of threes, hit a big shot I think towards the end, and then obviously the putback against the three had against he owns Ohio State. My goodness. I mean, from last year to the three to, in the Big Ten tournament last year, there's just so many games where, and everyone knows this, where Anthony Leal made a huge play down the stretch to get them the win. And I think that's how he's going to be remembered most. And someone who was so infinitely valuable to this team and a team that really at times had no defensive cohesion, but Leo was able to do that. Came with some big rebounds, some great assists. At times got to the free throw line, and hey, wasn't afraid to shoot a three. So all around, the nucleus maybe of this team was Anthony Leo, all things considered. Is there most improved? That's kind of it. Like anything else you want to
Yeah. Well,
add?
there was I had the favorite performance, that was the Leal one for me. Favorite shot of the year.
I think it's got to be that Galloway shot, right, against Ohio State.
Yeah. That or I keep going back to Anthony Leal here, but the Rutgers
Oh, the
halftime buzzer
half quarter.
beater,
Yes.
that
Or
was
the one at
good.
the end of the Michigan game.
That one too. But I'm thinking the one with after Ace Bailey pinned it off the glass
He
and
ran back and chucked it up. That's actually probably up there because I watched that one live. That's a
I
good
was
one.
not there unfortunately, but that was something.
What else? Any other big shots? And they didn't play like a ton of uh like close. None of their wins were necessarily like in Big Ten play like all that like really nail biting. I guess like against Penn State, there wasn't one shot there. Was there a dunk that like completely lit the place on fire? I don't think so.
When Umar Ballo caught that lob over Will Berg in the home Purdue game, that was pretty good.
Yeah, there was that picture. Yeah, that was neat. Yeah, it's like any like really
It's
funny.
kind of like the season, as much of a cliche as this is, the season just felt like going through the motions. Like there was not much that was truly exciting from a big moment standpoint. It was either like a foul game at the end or a blowout either way or just a normal game. There wasn't really anything that was too, up there, at least on the good side. Of course, you look back to like UCLA, Maryland, and away at Mackey, and those games are not ideal late game situations, but um, yeah, it was just kind of a oddly normal, basic season.
Yeah, I'll say two more things. The Firecrackers halftime show against Purdue is up there, and when
Yep.
Kurt Cignetti took the mic and the football team came on the court against Maryland. Those are the
Yep.
two loudest times that place has been this year. All right, let's maybe give out some letter grades for the players, and then kind of move on. I say we just kind of go in numerical order here by guys that played. So that means number one is Miles Rice. I was the biggest stickler with Miles Rice this year. Thought that one, the expectations were too high for him. Two, thought the scene would be a little too big for him. Thought he was obviously still so young and really missed 2 years because he had the didn't play 1 year and then obviously went through the chemo and obviously beating cancer is incredible and doing all that and then last year having an insane season in the Pac-12. Um, his final stats this year before I give out a grade. Let's see, where is he here? 41% from the field, averaged 27 and a half minutes, 25 games started out of the 32, kind of came off the bench late on in the year, but was the main point guard really at the beginning of the year. Averaged 10 points, 3 rebounds, had 88 assists, so a little over about 3.5 assists for Miles Rice. Um, Kind of like C here, like I think like average, like exactly like it was disappointing, but he wasn't terrible. I think there were times where IU went away from him a little too much, and he's got that ability to grab rebound and then take the ball down the court on the other end. So I think he was misused at times, and I thought in certain games off the bench he was good on both ends of the floor, honestly. But IU mismanaged him, and I think a lot of that is just because I think the scene was too big. The biggest thing that I ding him for is the late game stuff. The produce at Mackey, that's the biggest one. Like, call a timeout or something, or do whatever. Don't throw up that shot. The Maryland game, I'll give him a pass or whatever. But I mean, even like against UCLA, he had a bad shot, but Indiana grabbed the offensive rebound via Mbaka, who missed, and we all know what happened from there. So the late game execution was horrible with him, but all things considered, kind of average. I'll say C, C minus.
Yeah, I was gonna say CC minus for that. I think the expectations were too high. Um, and C would be, right about at those expectations. But I'm adjusting my expectations now that we've seen a little more out of him. And yeah, C or C minus, low end of the C. If I were to do a number grade, it would be like a 73 and a half.
I was thinking that too. Nice. All right. Next here on our list, well, Gabe Cupps played in 4 games, but we'll give him a pass here. Injured, obviously. Hoping he recovers and wherever he ends up next. If it is back in Indiana, nice to have him. He obviously has good years, one solid year of experience under the belt, and now will be a redshirt sophomore. That includes Shakai Newton, who's a double zero. So we did see for the first time this year, made 3 shots and I think had a bucket against Eastern Illinois in a game that I called. So that was neat. Okay, but in all seriousness, Anthony Leal is next, number three. What a year. I mean, 26 games, started 14 of them, 21 minutes, only took 45 shots, but made nearly 60 of them, 60% of them, 41% from three, 62% from the free throw line. 3 points, 3 rebounds, and had 48 assists in 26 games, so a little under 2 assists a game. Had a few blocks in there. Didn't turn the ball over a whole lot. From you, I'll let you start here.
So the only thing I would say with Anthony Leal is maybe I would have liked to see a little bit more offense, which would take him down to an A minus. But what takes him back from an A minus up to a high A, or if we're doing A pluses into that range, is the leadership and the veteran nature that he brings to this team. Um, and I'm going to offset that. So I'm going to give him a high A grade. I don't know if we're doing A pluses today, but I'll go like a 96.3.
Depends on which professor you have, if they round up or not. That's kind of the thing there, whether they round up to an A plus or not. Yeah, I'll say A minus. I just think offensively at times where he didn't make the right pass or was too hesitant to shoot it or got blocked when he didn't need to go up with it. So I mean, and for a season, I'm giving the team a what does I say, a C minus or a D plus. It's hard to give out A's, all things considered. So. I'll give him an A minus. Incredible year. Someone who's so loved within the community, and obviously another guy who no one thought would come back for another year, but that was kind of the start of the promising offseason last year. So yeah, Leal obviously high grade from both of us. Next up on the list, we go to Malik Renew. We just mentioned his injury, but 23 minutes he averaged this year, 19 of 26 games he started. 55%, averaged 13 points, nearly 5.5 boards. Had 41 turnovers to 52 assists. I'll start here and give him, I'll say a B. I just think defensively, still too many fouls. At times he couldn't stay on the floor. I think if you asked me to grade this when he got injured, I would be like, oh boy, this is like he's not having a great season at all. But came back when needed to, maybe a little bit early than people expected, and kind of Indiana really needed to ramp him up because they could tell Bala was getting tired. But great offensively, just really poor defensively, as it's kind of been now in 3 years for Renew. So I'll say B minus B, maybe a little harsh, but I mean, all things considered, like he's a junior now, and hasn't it took definitely took a step up from last year, but still lacking on the defensive end.
Accounting for the injury, I'm with you there. The offense was great when it needed to be. Felt like he was a good, reliable option late in the season, but the injury kind of disrupted things and defensively struggled still. And like you said, for a junior, it's still that's going to take you down a little bit. I'll go into the B range, B minus, right there with you. Nothing really, it was a slightly above average season from Renew compared to, you know, he improved some. Not really too much to say there though.
That's fair. All right, we can maybe clump the next two together. Tucker and Carlisle. There was rumor that Tucker entered the portal. He came out and said that's not true. So the portal opens on Monday when we're recording this. So this week we could be seeing guys leaving. But Tucker's tough. Like a freshman, the only true freshman that was in the recruiting class. Kind of a late signee. That we figured would get some minutes, kind of playing as a combo player for playing the forward position. Got that mid-range shot at times, made some shots to, stop some runs when Indiana needed a bucket. Defensively was okay, but kind of just like a casual freshman. I'm going to kind of give him a pass here because he only played in 23 games. I don't think he appeared in a single game after Woodson announced he'd be done, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So kind of like I might just give him like a pass. Like not this is pass fail here. Like he's a freshman, probably gonna move on somewhere else. At least test the waters of the portal, in my opinion. But showed some potential. But I mean, like, see if we're even giving out a grade here. But I'm kind of in the mood for pass fail with these kind of guys and give him a pass.
I'll go pass fail for Bryson Tucker. I'll give him a pass. There wasn't really a fit for him on this particular team with the guys around him. He did do some good things in the non-conference and went on some nice individual scoring runs. And in Big Ten play, he wasn't ready for it, and Woodson put him on the bench for that. And then Kane and Carlisle, I will give a letter grade to. I have been very hard on Kane and Carlisle this year, and I don't think when you shoot 29% from the field or whatever it was, I think it's gonna. I mean, the defense was solid. It wasn't, it was fine defense on the perimeter. Um, you never really noticed Kane and Carlisle doing much. Like it wasn't like the splash plays defensively where you would like pick somebody's pocket and go coast to coast. Like it was just like denying the ball. Um, I'm gonna give Kane and Carlisle like a D minus compared to the expectations. You just can't shoot 29% from the field. It felt like whenever Kane and Carlisle went into the game, it was gonna go downhill.
Yeah, whenever he's getting the ball, this was kind of like at times of possession ends here, kind of moment with him. Yeah, D minus. Like this is like he was good defensively. We expected him to be good, but for someone we had expectations to be starting as the shooting guard and right next to Miles Rice in the backcourt, just really bad. And Yeah, just took too many shots early in the shot clock, curling off a screen immediately, rose and took one. I want to see like the shot chart with him. Like, did he like attempt a single layup this year, like a shot within 10 feet? Like, that's just kind of like what it was for him. Definitely, yeah, got his hands up sometimes in passing lanes, but yeah, not someone who's gonna actually get a steal and create his own offense from his defense. Yeah, this is there's a reason why I only played a few minutes and threw up a few shots when someone needed a break after Woodson announced he was stepping down. So yeah, D minus for him. Uh, Next up, that brings us to Luke Goody. Someone who also I think we had high expectations for. Could he take a big step defensively? Came off the bench at Illinois, was pretty good, pun intended, for the Illini, and obviously had a year that was plagued by injuries a few years ago. He had a foot issue, but for Goody this year. Shot 41%, 39.2% from three, knocked down 62 threes, which was the most on the team. 88% from the line, averaged 9 points, 3 boards. Didn't put the ball on the deck all that much. Um, he had a rough start to the year, had a really, really good stretch, kind of beginning with that Ohio State game in Columbus where he really broke out. A few games at the end that, were, left a lot to be desired. Defensively, just, wasn't there. Like at times, too easy to get around. Um, I'll give him, but he was a vocal leader. Like that moment in the Bahamas in that Louisville game where he is literally running that timeout, and he was big. Like he cares. There's no doubt about it. I'll give him a B minus.
I'm gonna go B plus.
Fair enough.
All the
I don't
things
know
you
any.
said, but it was for all the same reasons. I just favor the leadership a little bit more.
Fair enough. Umar Balo is next. The big fella averaged 29 minutes. Did not attempt a three. 62% from the field, 57%, which is 7% better than he was at Arizona. 13 points, 9 boards. He was a double-double. Nearly a double double. And I think with less minutes later on in the season, with Renew kind of being healthy again, he probably gets 10 and 10. But 66 assists, 63 turnovers, and 40 blocks, a team high over a block a game. Was big when Renew was hurt, man. He was pushed to the brink. Like when Indiana needed to go one big, Bala was fantastic. Had like nearly a 20 and 20 game. I want to say had 15 and 20 or 20 and 15 against the Buckeyes once. But as soon as Renew went down, you knew he had to step up. And I thought all things considered, he was pretty good. From what we expected, I think Woodson again took him up a notch. And Indiana at times wanted to push the pace, and Bala was getting up and down the floor. The effort wasn't there initially at all. But at times he was diving on the floor and definitely made a big impact. It was much better, I think, in conference play than in non-conference play. So I'll give him a B plus here.
I was between a B plus and an A minus. I'm at like when you get an 89.5 and you don't know whether the teacher's gonna round up or not. That's where I'll sit. Yeah, he just felt like a reliable guy every game. There were not really many issues with him, skill wise. Of course, the social media incident, but it, things like that don't really matter. Um, yeah, he felt like you could always go to him, both offensively and defensively, where you could funnel guys in and have him block shots and then force feed him down low. And he just felt like he always made the right play, and the passing was highly improved from his previous years, and he made a difference on both ends of the floor. I'll go between an A minus and a B plus. I'm leaning towards the A minus.
Fair enough. Langdon Hatton is next. Again, another guy that really only played, I think, against Penn State when Renew had that scary, I think, was it food poisoning or whatever he had, where he had to be sent to the ER and had to play. But great game. The Gonzaga game is the one we're all going to remember. I remember on that episode, we for as pissed off as we were, we talked a lot about Langdon Hatton. We certainly, had our candles out for him with that performance against the Zags on Thanksgiving Day. But just, the backup big man, kind of the same as Peyton Sparks, just didn't get a ton going defensively, made a play here and there, but wasn't all that efficient on either end of the floor. Um, C minus. Like I don't know what the expectations really
Yeah.
were. Like we knew Bala was the best big man in the portal, and we knew Malik Renew was now going to be a junior. So we didn't expect Hatton to play all that much, especially if Indiana was going to play one big, which obviously they did not for most of the year. So I'll kind of give Hatton a C minus here.
I'm not going to give him a letter grade. I'll give him a grade of a Peyton Sparks with more finesse around the rim.
There you go. Take that for however you will. All right, that leaves us with Mbako and Galloway. Let's start with Mbako. Sophomore, obviously decommitted from Duke, had a great second half last year. 32 games, 25 minutes a game, played in all the games kind of very quietly. 44% from the field, 33%, just a tad under that from three. Shot well from the free throw line again at 81%, although he was close to 90%, I think, the beginning of the year. 12.2 points, nearly 5 boards, turned the ball over 38 times, which was more than his assists. Defensively, it's just such an issue for him. But his ability to put the ball on the floor and get buckets at times when Indiana needed it, he kind of, I think, really developed a mid-range shot this year. This was tough. Like, I mean, just like for me, it was just like the body language for me really just kind of gave it away with him. Um, I expect him to make a big jump this year and really be one of the best shooters in the conference, especially from three. That just never happened. I'll give him, I guess, a C. It's like C plus.
I was thinking C or C minus, just with the expectations being the Big Ten co-freshman of the year and coming in looking like you're going to have a focal point of this offense. I'm still a firm believer that Mbako returning was the reason that Liam McNeely is not at Indiana. Um, and you just compared to the expectations that come in, of course, this was a little bit of a sophomore slump, but I'm going C or C minus, just didn't live up to those expectations, regressed in most categories, and never really showed too much grit, with the exception of a few games. Didn't show much fight or want to attitude, and there was a lot of head hanging with Mbako.
Fair enough. That leaves us with Galloway, beginning with the co-captain and now ending with the co-captain. Galloway's numbers this year, mainly coming off the bench in the beginning, obviously dealt with an injury. 42% from the field, 33% from three-point land, 64% from the line. Nearly 9 points a game, as we mentioned, 2.3 boards, had a heck of a lot of assists, and had 79 turnovers, which also led the team. Oh, it's tough because at the beginning of the year I was calling him out, like from the missed 1-and-1s in that Maryland game to just defensively not being there, and doesn't look like he wanted to be all that there. And once he kind of, I think, realized that the team was not going to meet expectations, it's like, all right, he kind of, I think, at times checked out. But an incredible Mackenzie Mbako-esque second half of the season, a huge reason why Indiana was even in the conversation. He was the most consistent player for Indiana down the stretch, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. And the fans really recognize that. And obviously they didn't do speeches this year for senior day, but he would have gotten a huge round of applause after beginning of the year. It looked like he may have been booed. But regardless, much again, like a much bigger role. I'm giving him an A minus. I'm giving him an A. I'm giving him that A grade. I'm keeping it an A minus. But we didn't expect him to have a big. We expected, all right, play off the bench, do as he did a few years ago before Xavier Johnson got hurt, and kind of just go from there. Be yourself. Be a good leader. Hit some shots. Get to the basket. Make the right passes. Don't turn the ball over. And he did much more than that. A great game against at Purdue, and just down the stretch was monumental for Indiana's successes. And so for that, I'm tipping my cap. And what could have been an F at the beginning of the year for Trey Galloway, I'm gonna keep him at an A minus because, again, let's remember he did much more than we thought he was gonna have to do.
Yeah, I don't think there's any argument about that. I think a high A minus. I mean, he could creep into A territory. It's just that first part of the season was not great, but he was dealing with an injury there. So, um, yeah, I'm gonna go low A, high A minus for Trey Galloway. I think without him, this would have been more of a disaster than it some people consider it to be.
Fair enough. Coaching staff, you want to give the coaching staff a grade now that they're
I
all the way
I
out?
do, but first I want to give a couple of shout outs to Sean Burke and Dallas James for first team all bench mob. Um, those guys were fun to watch all year long. They had some interesting celebrations. They were always there, first up, first bout on the floor to high five their teammates, and I've been a big supporter of those two all year long. But yes, coaching staff.
This is tough. The other guy who I thought Tim Garl at times actually was very big. I thought he was big in terms of the energy as well. He was as animated as anyone on that bench when Indiana was making the big second half comeback runs. So I'll give a shout out to him as well. The coaching staff for me, man, this is like you put together a roster that was at least good enough to make the NCAA tournament, and I think could have competed to make the second weekend, but you failed. Like you failed this team. Like from the this was never like a really cohesive group until you got, your asses kicked in the Bahamas. And you just never did enough in Big Ten play to settle anything. And the only reason why Indiana was even in conversation was because the league was so top heavy this year with the SEC and I think even in the Big Ten, although the seedings are just all off for this conference. But he didn't really build anything. The best the team played was when Mike Woodson said he was over with, and no one had anything to worry about in terms of for next year and coming back. And there was no consequences after that. So I'm giving the coaching staff a D minus. You beat Purdue, that's an exception, and you beat Tom Izzo. So those two wins keep you out of it. But I mean, you spent millions of dollars. It was a top three roster, expensive wise, and you didn't even make the NCAA tournament. It really should be an F, but since they beat Purdue and we can be happy they beat Matt Painter, blah blah blah, D minus.
Yeah, no, this was a disappointing season. I will give the staff a little bit of credit for turning things around late in the season and not fully giving up, but that will take it from a D minus to a D for me. Um, it was just a disappointment. I mean, you could tell these guys love Mike Woodson. You could tell, they were playing for him, and some like we saw this with Tom Allen. Like you can be a great guy, but being a great guy doesn't often win you games. And there were some times where the coaching staff was stubborn to change things that, as we see now, they needed to change after they were forced to change things with some injuries. But yeah, I'm gonna go D. A disappointing season, especially because the coaching staff is responsible for putting the roster together. It's not like you have a GM putting it together for you. They had these guys, they chose them, they game planned with them, and it just never worked out. So a D for disappointing is what I will grade that.
Fair enough. That's it. That's kind of everything I had to kind of wrap up this season, put it in a bow. Yeah, underwhelming, man. Like this was supposed to be the year where Woodson was on the chopping block to begin with. It's seeing Dusty May cut down the nets in Indianapolis was like, damn, we could have had him if Indiana wanted to give up on Mike Woodson after year three, after putting together a really bad roster a year ago, but it was better this year, at least on paper. And I think this team would have run the team last year off the floor. But here's where we are. And that kind of does it for this final, I guess, in-season episode of the House of Hoosier. Ian, any final thoughts as we will just be able to watch March Madness, pick a second team, and go from there, and I guess just root against UNC in Dayton,
I don't know how much of the tournament I'm going to be able to watch. I'm going to Columbia for the women's tournament,
right?
so a nice trip out to South Carolina there. But I'll find a way to watch as many games as I can. But it's as well as Indiana is not in the tournament. It's unfortunate to say that as I've kind of gotten used to it, so I know how to enjoy tournaments without Indiana being in them. Um, and yeah, March is known for, of course, having some unexpected moments and star players and Cinderellas, and can't wait to see it all unfold. Unfortunately, Indiana will not be part of that group. They were not invited to the dance, but there will be some fun stuff going on, and I can't wait to see what happens.
7 of the last 9 years now, Indiana is not in the NCAA tournament, and yeah, that sucks. I mean, I don't think this team would have gone very far. I think maybe they win Dayton and they lose just like they did in Mike Woodson's first year. So it's not like I'd be more frustrated if I really thought Indiana could make a run in this. I think North Carolina fans probably think that with considering their team is playing a little bit better than they have been, but I mean, all things considered just not a good year. And, Indiana has really only themselves to blame. If you put yourself in this position on Selection Sunday, nothing is in your hands. And, yeah, they're going to have to be watching on the sideline. Candles up for the seniors, to Trey Galloway, Anthony Leal, potentially Luke Goody. For the other guys that transferred in, a big thank you for um, just being a part of this team this season. A lot of ups and downs, really unexpected coaching change. So we raised our candles and our glasses to you guys, and obviously all the best going forward. You're Hoosiers forever, so let's not lose track of that. But with our candles up, we say so long here on the House Hoosier podcast. We'll be back at some point, probably next week, to talk about the Mike Woodson era, everything as a whole, new coaches, rumors are flying around. Who knows? Maybe they'll have a coach by next week, but that means the team would be out of the NCAA tournament, which would probably not be a great thing. But for Ian, I'm Austin, and for our candles, we are here. Bubba, we hate you, and I hope UNC, and we are desperately